Hi there, it's Matthew here from Knight Edmonds Estate Agents. I'm here with founder and director Alex Knight to talk about a recent blog I've written concerning UK house prices. So, hello Alex.
Hello.
So, I think it's a hot topic at the moment. A lot of people have been asking what's happening to house prices. Just wanted to get your report, your thoughts and put a bit of context on it.
Well, we've gone through an extraordinary period of house price growth. House prices post-COVID have skyrocketed and they've created this artificial normality that we've all become accustomed to, where house prices go up by 10 to 15% a year and it just keeps going and going and going until our good friend Kamikaze Kwasi launched his budget back in September and things changed. So if you look back at what's happened over the last few years, the last quarter of 2020, an average of just over 23,000 houses sold per week. The last quarter of 2021, an average of 21,000 houses sold per week. And in the last quarter of 2022, up until the end of week 3 in November, that figure had dropped to just under 20,000. So we'd gone from 23,000 to 21,000 to just below 20,000.
That sounds really bad.
It's a disaster, isn't it?
Oh, it's awful.
But wind the clock back a bit further, and when you look pre-COVID, what was going on in quarter 4 of 2016, 17, 18 and 19, it was actually around 16,000, 16,000, 16,000 and 16,000.
Seems to be a theme there. So pre-COVID, average number of properties sold per week in quarter 4 was circa 16,000.
Correct.
So far in 2022, it's over 19,500.
Correct.
So why all the doom and gloom in the national press?
Well, it's your stereotypical news of the world headline. There's a statistic that can be manipulated for effect. How's it? The housing market is crashing. Well, there's truth in that, and there's also mistruth in that, depending on the context that you apply to it. If you look at it in the post-COVID context, in this artificial world we've been living in, where the housing market has been, just on fire, really, there's been a significant drop. There's been a drop of just over 3,000 houses being sold per week. But there's still 3,000 houses or 3,500 houses more per week being sold than normality pre-COVID, which wasn't a bad market to all intents and purposes.
No, I don't recall seeing in any industry or national press that we was in housing trouble, the house market was falling or anything of that nature. So I think you're right. I think we've just become accustomed and acclimatized to this artificial bubble that was created post-COVID.
Now that doesn't mean that house prices aren't changing. Because although we're talking here in the volumes of transactions, and there's been headlines that have been targeting the volumes of transactions saying that they're plummeting. Well, they are and they aren't. It depends what way you look at it. You could probably also find a bit of truth that in the first part of Q4, transaction volumes were a little bit higher than they are in the latter part of Q4. You need more data to really interpret the stats and gain concrete conclusions from it. But the trend is actually, when you look at it, 19,500, 20,000 transactions a week, that's still pretty good.
Yep. I think most estate agents would take that. Most home movers would take that as well.
Absolutely.
Now, I've seen a lot of customers asking, and me and Richard here have spoken about, house prices being adjusted now. They are decreasing statistically. We can see that. So, is there any good news if house prices do adjust? If there isn't a drop of say 10% as a figure, is there any winners in this? If so, also is there any losers, as it were?
Well, the good news is if you're selling your house, you probably haven't bought your house this year. Now, between the period of January to September, I haven't got the exact stats to hand, but house prices went up by somewhere between 10 and 15%. During the last quarter, where house prices are use the word dropping, I'd say there's probably been a correction in the market.
Yeah.
There is a distinct difference. I can go into that a bit later on. House prices are expected to be around 8 to 12% lower. So basically, by the end of the year, house prices will pretty much be what they were at the start of the year.
Yeah.
So have house prices really dropped?
Not really.
No. What we're seeing is a correction in the market where the stamp duty holiday has fueled growth, pandemonium, and tabloid headlines have caused this acceleration in the growth of house prices, whereas the new budget, the cost of living crisis, interest rates have forced people to take stock and take a much more measured approach to how much they're prepared to pay for properties. So what we're now seeing is more sensible, more rational decisions with regards to what people are prepared to pay for a property, and you're seeing that artificial bubble being corrected. There is still an underlying trend. There are more people that need houses than there are houses available.
Yep.
So house prices have crashed, potentially. You could argue that if you want to look at the very short term. Look at the medium term, house prices have just stopped growing at ridiculous rates. That's the real headline, but that doesn't really sell papers.
No, it certainly doesn't. Good news never does. So, okay. I mean, when I was doing this article, I looked at, if there was a correction of 10%, your 2-bedroom house in Maidstone being worth £250,000, 7 out of 10 people upsize when they sell. So they got that person in their 2-bed, another child's come along on the way, now looking to move to a 3-bed at 350,000, say. So you've taken 10% off your £250,000 house, 25,000, but then you're taking 35,000 off the next property you're buying. I see that as you actually win.
£12,500 in your pocket.
Absolutely. Well, that certainly does pay for your solicitors, stamp duty, removal costs, and everything else.
Yes and no.
Go on.
So there's a flip side to that. So someone that's got a property at 250,000, for example, when they bought that property, they'd probably have a 10-15% deposit. If you drop that house price by 10%, the deposit they're then taking with them for their onward purchase is reduced in cash terms. It's not just your deposit's 10% lower because you can't take that money out. If that property's dropped by 25,000, that could be your whole equity gone. So it depends on your position. Some people it will affect more than others. If you're talking someone that's owned a property for 5-10 years, odds are they've got a decent amount of equity in it. 10% drop in house prices, you're absolutely right. Quid's in, £12,500 saving on the onward.
Okay, so it's, but I just come across an old statistic. The average person moves in the UK once every 7 years. So unless you've brought in the last 2 years and you need to sell for whatever reason, then you may not benefit from an adjustment in prices. But if, like the vast majority of people, you're going to be Quid's in.
The majority of people upsizing actually would benefit from a drop in house prices because it reduces the gap between the two transactions.
Absolutely. Well, there's the winners. It's got to be, I said 7 out of 10 people are upsizing. That leaves 3 people that either downsize or sell a probate property or an investment property that they have. Are they losers then by default?
So there will be losers in this. You've got people that will have fallen into negative equity. It's a very small percentage that will fall into negative equity. Generally speaking, if you're talking a 10% drop in house prices, the ones that will be in negative equity are the ones that bought with less than a 10% deposit within the last year. There will be others, those that have taken a further advance in their mortgage, that have borrowed more against the house. But 8 to 12% drop in the market is not significant enough to put too many people into negative equity.
Okay. Well, the statistics that I got from on this was only 2.9% of people that are going to be in negative equity. And I think I should put some context on that. Negative equity is only important in 2 scenarios: when you're selling or when you're remortgaging. If you're still living there and you're paying off the mortgage, it's it's not relevant at that time. Only when those two times in your life that come into play, then it becomes important.
So when you're selling, yeah, absolutely it's relevant. There is another scenario when you're remortgaging. It's not just those negative equity that are affected on remortgages. If you bought your property at 90% loan to value, for example, and house prices have dropped by 8% and you now only hold 2% equity in the property, try and find a lender that will let you remortgage at 98% loan to value.
Well, I can't recall any when I do my
They
research.
don't exist.
So no, it's
So that leaves your options for remortgage very limited and potentially exposes you to higher mortgage repayments.
Yeah, I mean, normally, in my experience, the lender's standard variable rate is higher than their fixed deals that they can offer to their what they perceive as lower risk clients with more equity in their home.
Yeah.
So in the ever increasing number of people that I speak to, friends, family, customers, their biggest fear is if we roll the clock back and have another credit crunch like we did in 2008.
Interesting point that, because if house prices did drop by the same amount that they dropped in the credit crunch back in 2007, 2008, that would only take house prices back to where they were in January last year.
Doesn't sound that bad at all, really.
Unless you bought
Since
in that
then,
period.
and looking to sell or remortgage.
The only people that are going to be really adversely affected if house prices crashed in the same fashion they did in 2007, 2008 are those that have bought and the ones that have bought and are selling again within very close proximity.
So, in summary then, people shouldn't focus on the doom and gloom headlines that are in the national presses and actually look at it in some context.
Take a measured view on it.
Yeah.
Don't believe everything you read in the tabloids.
I think a lot of people don't. If you're interested to know what your house is worth now, if you're looking to buy, looking to sell, looking to let, become a landlord, then please give the office a call. Numbers detailed below. We look forward to hearing from you. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you.